Well,
Well,
here we go again.
yeah, I got my Clint Eastwood outfit on. It's kind of chilly here in our modern, up to date studio, and it's warm outside.
Right.
But they still got the air conditioning on in here, I reckon.
I think so. I believe that's correct,
What have you been up to, Bobby
Well,
T?
I just been hanging around and watching the election results.
Boy,
Well,
them-
there ain't no results yet, but
No, I know.
just reporting.
And I think there's a con job going on, but I see a silver lining to this. I'm thinking that if Trump loses this election, it'll be a good thing for the country. I'll tell
Well-
you about that later. Just keep watching. I'll
Right.
explain that later.
Well, of course, my feelings kind of vary. I feel like Trump probably is going to get the boot. He's going to get.
Well, even if he gets back in the office, they have managed to start their latest scam, and this they're going to delegitimize the next 4 years if they don't manage to steal the next 4 years.
Right. Well, that's very true. I was just thinking if I could sum up how I feel about the current elections.
Okay,
And,
sum it up. Is it?
well, I don't know that this does it exactly, but there was a poem written back in 1888 by Ernest Thayer.
By who?
Ernest Thayer, Thayer.
Okay.
And the last 4 lines of that poem kind of sums up the way I feel about him. And it goes kind of like this. I think I can remember it. I don't know. 1888's a long time to remember something.
Yeah, I
from.
know. And does it start off, the night was dark and the sky was blue?
No, no, no,
Does
but
it start
it-
off, what was it? What was that about? 'Twas the night before Christmas?
No.
Okay, a different one. Okay,
No,
go
this
ahead.
is different. This is the last 4 lines of the poem. The poem has probably maybe 25 or 30 lines to it, I think, but somewhere around that. But the last 4 lines go like this. Somewhere in this great land of ours, the sun is shining bright. Bands are playing. See that one time. Let me reconsider here what I'm thinking about. Okay, so somewhere in this favorite land, the sun is shining bright. Bands are playing. And now let me see. I don't know exactly say bands are, but no. Just go ahead and talk some of them. I'm gonna have to memorize this thing, boy.
You can go ahead and talk some, okay? Well, I think that since they've kicked the bear, sometimes you don't want to kick the bear,
Right,
but I think they've kicked the bear.
right. Well, I don't doubt
And
that.
I'm wondering if they put Trump out of the presidenting business, if he won't go into the news business.
He could possibly do that.
He'd put Fox out of business in a heartbeat, and who would watch CNN if they could get it from the mouth of the horse?
Well, I'm gonna get this form right in just a minute, but
You need a little light over there in your memory. You need a little light there for your memory, or a pair of glasses, or anything. How come they could count California's votes faster than they could count Nevada's? They're a whole lot bigger.
well, they didn't really count California.
They counted California in one afternoon, and they ain't even going to start till
Right.
they ain't promising nothing till today on Nevada, and it still ain't done.
Okay. Let me just
Okay.
read this little poem. This somewhat sums up the way I feel about the election. It says.
Okay.
It says, oh, somewhere in this favorite land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing and children run about, but there's no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck
Casey
out.
struck out.
And that's the way I feel about it.
I know that I'd heard that somewhere. And you know, Trump, he increased the vote by the black people and from the brown people and from the women people, but Joe's got the dead people party sewed up.
Well, one thing that hurt him, Arizona, was when he went all out on McCain.
Yeah.
He was a favorite son, and his daughter went out there immediately and started campaigning against
Yeah.
Trump.
Well, his widow did too.
Right, yeah, and his widow did also, yeah. And
Well, I think McCain sold us all out. You can say whatever you want to about his war record and all that. I'm not arguing against it. I wasn't there. I don't know much about it. But I do know that he stabbed the country in the back to get even with Trump.
I think that's very true. Yeah, I think so. I appreciate his service and don't take a thing in the world from him. But I was never a John McCain fan. The only good thing he ever did was when he nominated Sarah Palin.
I agree with you. He made sure she wasn't invited to his funeral because he thought she cost him the election. I wouldn't have voted for John McCain. In fact, I didn't vote for him. I voted for Sari, hoping John would retire early, kind of like Kamala or Kamala or whatever her name is that they're doing.
Kamala Harris, yeah.
Like Molly Harris, she's wanting old Joe to hurry up and step aside. Well, I was hoping that John would get elected and have the good sense to get out of the way.
Right.
I don't know that we'd have been better off. Well, we just didn't have no choice. And in 2008 and 2012, I tell you, that was...
No, you had Mitt Romney and John McCain, and you had...
Mitt Romney, he goes whichever way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, that is one of the greatest disappointments I've had has been in Mitt Romney. You know, his dad was such a hard rock, you know, and stable person, and Mitt, like you say, he'll go whichever way the wind blows.
Whoever he thinks will like him the best, that's where he's a sucking up.
Right, that's exactly right. And say we had very little choice in 2008, 2012, and you know, this will be if
It was an easy choice in 2016. I didn't vote for nobody.
you know, if Biden does assume the presidency, that will be 15 presidents that I have lived under.
Well, let's see.
I guess I'll live long enough for them to finish this counting.
I've been under 14, I guess. If you've been under 15,
You didn't live under Franklin Delano.
No, but I had Truman. Had Truman, and of course I don't remember that, but Truman and Eisenhower and Kennedy and Johnson and Nixon. No, wait a minute. Johnson,
Kennedy,
Nixon,
Johnson, Nixon.
and then Ford, and then Carter, and Reagan, and who's next? Bush, Elder, and Clinton, and
Bush,
took us.
then Bush.
Yeah, Bush, the younger,
Right.
and then Obama, and then God Save the Queen. We had. What's that feller's name?
Who you talking about?
He who should not be named, Trump. Well, were you around for? You wasn't around for Hoover, was you?
No.
So you've had 15. I've had 14.
Was it 15?
That's what you said.
It'll be 15 with Biden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll still be 14.
Well, I hope so. Say, I'm not going to live any longer.
Well, I said I saw a silver lining to it, and right here's what I'm thinking. if you remember the Tea Party?
Yes, I do.
Where they at now?
Probably drinking root beer.
Yeah, they just kind of faded out. But I'm thinking there's enough people involved and enough people upset. I think that the shoe may change feet because we've had some lefties carrying a grudge since 2000, wanting to pay back for stealing the election from Al Gore, and that's kind of grown into a movement, and it has expanded to the point where they're ruthless. We've invited in socialists and communists and everything else into that flock. And I think maybe they finally kicked the bear this time. If they steal this from Trump, and I think that's what's going on, and I think if they manage to do that we're going to have enough upset people this time to hang together and form a lasting movement. These milksop Republicans, so-called Republicans, or at least so-called conservatives, I guess they are Republicans, that have been carrying the banner for the last 40, 50 years have been people that didn't believe in anything except taking care of themselves. And if you think that there's not been a concerted effort by some people with connections against Trump, something wrong with you. This outfit we got now, you can't cross. I mean, even Schumer said you don't do it, but you can't cross the CIA and the FBI when they're in cahoots with this whole clique that's making money off of us by figuring out ways to keep these little bush wars going on and these projects to spend money like bridges and high-speed rail and all this environmental. And nobody wants dirty air or dirty water, but right now, this place, we have the cleanest air and the cleanest water that's been during the lifetime of anybody breathing on Earth at this time. I'm talking about in this area.
That's true.
And that playhouse has been going on for so long that they definitely stick together to keep it going, and they trade from one person to the other, one party to the other, and try to get us to believe that they're actually in opposition to each other. But it's like two lawyers down at the courthouse. They go in there and cuss and roar and really knock each other and go eat dinner together and come back and have another round and then go eat supper together, and their kids get together and play ball.
Right. Well, that's true, and it's also very much like a professional wrestling match.
Yeah, it is. Gorgeous George.
Yeah, Gorgeous George and Jake the Snake and all that bunch.
I never heard of Jake Snake.
Huh?
I never heard of Jake Snake.
No, I knew Jake the Snake personally. He was from Charlotte, North Carolina. And he had a romance with Peggy. I can't take Peggy's last name. I knew real well. And Peggy brought him to Asheville one time and introduced me to Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake.
Well, I didn't know Gorgeous George either, and I never did know Corsica Joe. I didn't know any of them fellers.
Well, I didn't really know any of them, even though they used to televise the wrestling matches from High Point, North Carolina, up there. They staged up there in Channel 8.
There's always been a bunch of crooks over in that area.
Channel 8, which was, at that time, was, I think, CBS affiliate. And they would televise up there in the old Sheraton Hotel. And I never will forget, I had a good friend, but I don't think he's dead. I still have a good friend that was on the High Point Police Department. He was come on up pretty good, you know, and back when he was just a foot patrolman, he used to pull his patrol car around by my house, leave the door open so he could hear the radio, and we'd get out there and pitch horseshoes all afternoon. Well, he was going out Centennial Avenue and he met this Cadillac that evidently didn't have any shocks on it. It was just hitting the high spots coming out through there like about 45, 50 mile an hour, maybe faster. So LJ, his name was LJ, and they called him LJ affectionately. So LJ turned his patrol car around and chased him down. And this is what he told me. He says, when I walked back toward the man's car, says, this fella just kept getting out of the car. Says I walked up to him, says, all I could see was the boogers in his nose. He said, I looked straight at him and I said, fella, says, I don't know who said you were doing anything wrong, but they're a damn lie.
Who was he?
I used to know his name, red-headed wrestler. I used to know his name, but I guess I kind of forgot it like I did the last 4 lines of Casey at the Bat.
Casey at the Bat. Now, you got me on that. Now, I never have read the whole poem, I don't think.
Well, it's long.
Maybe I did once upon a time. But I remember whenever I guess I read all that, but that's been a long time ago, back about 1800.
1888, the last time I read it.
You was there when they wrote it, wasn't you? Proofread for him, did you?
I think so.
What was that, the one about something to somebody to something? It was about what do you call it? Whenever you get 3 outs at one time, what do you call that?
3 outs at one time, triple play.
Yeah, and it was about something to something to
Oh,
somebody.
you're talking about who's on first or who's on second?
No, I'm not talking about Abbott and Costello. There was this poem, may have been. It wasn't a mighty Casey. You know, let me tell you about Mel Famey in a minute. You ever hear about Mel Famey?
No.
Well, I'll tell you about Mel Famey in a minute, but there was this poem about somebody to somebody to somebody. They was throwing the ball around, and it was, I got to figure that out. I don't even know how to look it up, or I would now. But Mel Famey was kind of like Casey. He was a pitcher, though. Mel Famey, he was, he was a pitcher in the big leagues, and he could throw a fastball. I mean, it had smoke coming off of it when he went by. You didn't see the ball, you just smelled the smoke. It was that good. But old Mel had a problem. He liked to drink.
So did Babe Ruth.
Yeah, and they tried to keep him sober, and it just got so bad, you know, that they just called him out there just if they just had to have him. And it was the top or the bottom of the 9th inning, and they was the bases is loaded, and so the manager called out the great Mel Famey. Well, Mel, the crowd cheered because they knowed old Mel was going to pull this off, and they sent old Mel out there, and he throwed one, and it was a ball. And he throwed another and hit it as a strike. And he got down to 3 balls, 2 strikes, the bases was loaded, the team was behind by 1, and it was the bottom of the 9th. So old Mel, he wound her up in the chairs going out of the crowd because they knowed the great Mel Famey was going to win the game right now. And he pitched another, and it went way out of the box, and the guys walked around the base, and the game was over, and they was all out there cheering. They went running out there, and this one of these, the catcher from the other team was out there, and he looked there on the pitching mound, and there was a beer bottle. And he picked it up, and he was looking at it, and his pitcher come over and says, "What you got there?" He said, "That's the beer that made the great Mel Famey walk us."
I guess so. Yeah.
Wasn't the Slits, though, I don't think. You remember the Slits, the beer that made Milwaukee
Yeah,
famous?
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Now, that was the beer that made the great Milwaukee Walkers.
Well, Walker's, yeah. That's about it. Do you remember me telling you the joke about the professor at college that cloned himself?
No, I missed that. And
You don't, I didn't tell you that one.
no, I don't think
Well,
so. I don't know.
This
Maybe you
professor,
did.
he cloned himself even though it was against the law and it was against the policy of the university for him to do anything like that. So he kept him at home and
Oh, I remember something about this, but that's been a while. That's back when we was TV stars, Bob.
Okay, so he kept him at home, and the only contact he had was the people that come over there and drink and party at the professor's house. And the clone learned all the dirty jokes and all the ribald stories that were told, and that's the only thing he knew to talk about. So the professor wouldn't take him out in polite company because he was always an embarrassment.
Because he was so impolite.
Right, yeah, because he was always an embarrassment to him. So finally they were going to have a masquerade party. And his buddy says, well, why don't you take your clone with you and y'all dress up very much alike and nobody will know the difference. So they finally persuaded him, and he decided to take the clone to the masquerade party, which was being held there in New York City up on somewhere the 45th or 46th floor or something like that.
46th floor.
So he instructed the clone that he was not to have any contact with any women or anything, that he was to keep a civil tongue in his mouth and behave. Well, they no sooner got to the party than he had a couple of women over there cornered, telling them all kind of nasty jokes. So the professor went over there and grabbed him by the neck of his neck, the nap of his neck, and carried him out on the balcony and proceeded to really blaze him down about the way he was acting. Well, the professor got so ill and mad at him that he knocked the clone off the balcony there, and he fell 41 stories down, flat in the street.
It's out. We got a red light flashing for some reason.
So the police come to investigate the death of this man on the sidewalk. So they come up there and they got all the information, and they found out that this was a clone of this man. So really he had killed himself, but yet he was still alive. So they didn't know really what to do, so they called back to the dispatcher, who put them in touch with the sergeant, who put them in touch with the chief, and they finally resolved this thing. And the only thing that they could come up with that happened, that this was a case of a death of an obscene phone call.
Huh? Death?
Of obscene clone call.
A clone fall.
Yeah.
You said phone call.
Yeah, no.
Clone fall.
Sometimes I'm just a little bit
The
retarded.
death an obscene clone. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it'd still be murder, wouldn't it?
I don't know. You know,
Jerry Clower talked about a feller one time. He was this feller. He was a geologist, and he went around giving lectures about all these different earth structures, right, and all these this really complicated physical.
Occurrence.
It was a complicated deal, and it took, just an intense study course to ever get up there to even understand the talks. But
he didn't understand the question.
Yeah, and he had this chauffeur that always drove him to the lectures, and this chauffeur would just sit over there every time when he unloaded him, he'd go park the car and come sit and watch the lectures, and he listened to them so long, he knew everything by heart. And they got to talking on the way to a lecture one time. There's Jerry Clower's story. It's not mine. And they was going to this lecture, and they got to talking, and that there. That chauffeur said, "Well, you know what? I could do what you do." And this your professor says, "You do what I do?" Yeah, I've heard this story of this lecture so many times. I could do just exactly what you. Why, that's just an insult. Well, I'll tell you what, Professor, you just change clothes with me, and we'll go in. They don't know who you are, and they don't know who I am. I'll give you a lecture. And, well, okay, then, let's just see you do that. So they did, and they went in, and the chauffeur got up there, and he gave the whole lecture, and he did just fine. He didn't miss a syllable. And so when it was all over, it come time for questions. And the professor sitting back there grinning, because he knew this wasn't going to work out. The old boy could give his lecture, but he wasn't going to answer the questions. So the first guy, he stood up and he asked this big complicated question of the professor. And the chauffeur, pretending to be the professor, says, "Well, what's your position here?" And the guy says, "Well, I'm a PhD. I do." "You ask me a question like that and you call yourself an educated man? Well, that's one of the most insulting questions from an educated man I've ever heard. Well, even my chauffeur could answer that. Get up here, Charlie, and tell him."
Yeah. It's so simple. My chauffeur can answer that correctly. Well, that's true, But back to the Casey.
Hitting the ball,
Casey
missing it. The mighty Casey struck out.
Yeah, the little poem I read. Trump somewhat was like Casey. He was supposed to be invincible. And
no, he ain't fenced yet, but they're working on it.
But they have gnawed and clawed at that man and pulled him down so much over the years. I think they got him off his game this time. I really do. And
well, I don't think it had anything to do with the game. He has exposed how corrupt and inaccurate the reporting, the press meaning the whole news reporting scheme is. And I'm thinking that it might come back to bite the second Murdoch clan. They've got the fresh Murdochs in there now, and they've been kind of working against Trump a little, and we're not getting the truth either way. We're getting slanted news, but you only get a right slant from Fox News. But they have kind of not been true to form. And I'm thinking that there's a grand opening at the end of this thing for Donald Trump to start the Trump News Network. I don't know where they do that. That'd be TNN. We had one of them. It was a Tennessee.
Turner News.
Turner, yeah.
Turner News Network.
I'm thinking about there was a Tennessee, the Nashville-based thing out there too. But anyway, he might just do that. There'll be a fortune to be made at it, and he can cause them nightmares from now on.
Yeah.
They throw him out there at that old, what's his name? It's over Project Veritas. I don't know. What is he? He's either Irishman or a Scotsman. One I talk about name-wise. Can't think of his name. O'Keefe. Yeah, O'Keefe. O'Keefe, he might just hire him to run the network. Boy, they could make a mint.
I believe he really
They
could.
put Fox out of business.
Yeah. But, well,
He might buy stock in that company.
I would too.
So far, my broker has lived up to his name. I'm broker now than I was before I met him.
Yeah, well, the stock I got, it's kind of having it rough right now because all the grass has died down.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And water's been plentiful, though. It'll grow back.
It has. We're 20 inches over the average, I believe, this year.
Get foot and mouth disease or sore foot or something, and you're out of stock business.
Yeah, but I'd like to see Trump try to do. What was the guy's name that tried to open up his own news channel? The blonde-headed guy.
You talking about Breitbart? No,
Yeah,
Breitbart.
it wasn't him, but no, it's the blonde-headed guy that I believe he has a.
You talking about the guy that Virgin Airlines guy?
The what?
Virgin Airlines guy?
I'm not sure.
Well, tell me more about him.
He was on Fox right much, and
Oh, Glenn Beck.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's what I'm talking
Now,
about.
he's still going, but it's trimmed down some. He got
Right.
to Blaze. He's got a online and apparently successful business. But,
Right.
well, Trump has got the wherewithal, the backing, and the ability to make that thing work. Glenn Beck,
Yeah.
he was he wasn't in the same league with Donald Trump, managerially anyway.
Right. Well, I liked old Glenn. I enjoyed hearing him, and but he's faded a little bit.
Yeah,
But I think things are going to be okay. One thing, there's another kickback coming if Biden gets in.
what's that?
I think we're going to be in for a rough time
You talking about when?
economically,
Oh,
in world affairs also. Obama went through this apologetic deal where
Yeah.
he went out and apologized to everybody for America, and then Trump comes in and he doesn't apologize to anybody. He upholds what we have done throughout the world.
I'm a
over
little
the
worried
ages.
about who's going to be running the country, 'cause it ain't going to be Joe and it ain't going to be Harris. It's going to be somebody else pulling the strings. They may be the front man, but that's it.
That's
Or
how they
for a
are.
woman.
Yeah, they're very much like the Jewish community used to always hire somebody that was non-Jewish to run their businesses.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is up there. Somebody else is going to be running it. It's not going to be Biden or.
Well, we know it'll be
uh,
George Soros will be the head honcho, but
Probably.
I don't know. I'm made up my mind to only do politics once a week now. I cast my last vote. I'm not voting for or against anybody else. I've done my part and I'm done. And I'm going to mind my own business. I'm going to coast on into that. What is that there? Long goodbye. What is it?
Yeah.
How's that go? Anyway, they can have it. I can make it just fine.
Well, I don't have to have any of them anyhow. They can cut my whole Social Security check off or whatever they want to. I'm going to make it anyhow.
No, I
But
don't.
all these people living up in New York City and
Yeah.
Chicago, it's going to be hard as hell to eat that damn concrete.
I know it. I can get by as long as it rains and the sun shines with not even one penny.
Right, I can too.
Of course, I have to pay taxes, but I could rake that up selling aluminum cans or something, maybe.
Well, you could probably maybe sell pencils and tell people where the post office is.
Yeah, can't never tell. The farmers around this part used to raise backer, and that was a year-round job. You started in
February,
you started in February. You burnt the backer beds,
right?
and then you got out there and you planted the seeds, and then you covered. You built the bed, and then you covered them. I don't know how they done it over where you was at.
Yeah, that same thing covered with
And we covered with-
cheesecloth type
yeah,
material.
yeah, and then whenever they got up big enough, you went and pulled them, and on a wet morning, you went out and started sticking your finger down the mud and pulling it out and sticking the plant in and cramming the mud back around the roots.
Right. Well,
And that was the beginning. And after that, you'd already went through working the field up and getting it ready, and then you went through, or we did, we went through after a while and dressed the upper side of it with nitrate of ammonia. We just,
top dressing.
yeah. And then you got to work, you got to plow it and hoe it and work the weeds out of it.
Get the
And then after a
get
while,
the worms.
yeah, after a while, we'd mix lime and arsenic
Oh,
and go through with a cheesecloth again and dust them plants to keep the cutworms from getting it. And when it got up a little bigger, well, you worked it up till it got ready had to go through and pull the backer worms off and stomp them little green suckers. And then you had to top it and sucker it. And then you had to cut it and spear it and carry it in and hang it. And then we took it down. I think you guys done different. You cooked yours, didn't you?
yeah. We had flu cured.
Well, whenever it got dried out, you waited till it was in case. And what that was, on a foggy morning, there's enough moisture that the leaves was soft. If you done it when it's dry, they'd fall apart. But when there's moist, you went through and you took them down out of the loft and you laid them out and you handed them off. You graded them, and you had the ground leaves and the long red, long yellers, short reds, and the sucker top leaves at the top. And you done all that, and you tied it in the hands, and then you packed it in the bales, and then you hauled it, and you got your check. Well, you got your check around Christmas time.
Right.
And the first thing you done was laid aside enough money to pay your taxes.
Right.
And the rest of it, the young'uns got some new shoes, and everybody had some oranges and apples, and you was ready to start with your backer bed again.
Right. We had to go back again. I have personally burned off tobacco beds. I have personally done every bit of it, with the exception we did not cut it. We primed it.
You picked it in the field, didn't you?
Picked it in the field and cured it, and no telling how many cords of wood I have cut.
You probably packed it in barrels, didn't you?
Oh no! We strung it on strings, on a stick, okay?
Yeah.
And we cured it.
Did you tie it in the hands?
No, well, wait a minute. Then we took it down. We packed it down, okay? We packed it down, and when it got packed down and laying right, we would take it up and we would put it in. Everybody had a basement, and we put it in a basement to bring it in order. That was what you do to get it moist. You'd put it in a basement, and you put it in one afternoon. Next morning, you take it out, and you take it off the string, and put it in a rack, put it on a table, and you would grade it. You had about 5 or 6 different grades you'd make of it, and once you got it graded, you'd tie it. And I could tie a beautiful hand of tobacco.
You look like a good hand tire.
And then we would put it on a tobacco pallet, okay, and we would take it to market, and then the buyers would come by and bid on it, okay? And
Sold America.
yeah, and we did pretty good. We'd get about 2,400 pounds to the acre.
We was limited. We could only raise, the biggest allotment we ever had was 6/10 of an acre.
Really? Well, see, we had.
And that would be about
We had 5 acres allotment.
1,400 pounds.
500, let's see, 5 acres on my daddy's farm. My brother-in-law had 5.5 acres. That's 10. Miss Merle and them had about 3 acres. 13, and then Miss Davis. I farmed these farms 3 times. Miss Davis had 3 something. Then somebody else. I had about 15, 16 acres of tobacco.
Well, we didn't have anything like that. Couldn't get it, but we just had. I raised 5/10, and then it got to be down to poundage. It started out, they come out and measured your field, and then they started doing it on your weight, and you
Right.
could sell. I think I had somewhere around 1,000 pound, 1,200 pound allotment, and we raised barley.
Yeah, I know.
And that was at that time. That was the premium crop. You guys raised that dark fired stuff. It didn't bring a lot per
No,
pound at that
no.
time.
Right.
We'd get if we averaged 50-55 cents a pound, we was doing pretty good. I think you guys are getting about a nickel or a dime back then.
Well,
weren't you?
not when I was raising it. When I was raising it, I was getting close to $1 a pound.
Well, that was later.
Yeah.
I remember hearing them. I was over in North Carolina, and they were giving out the sales prices that were going on, and it was cheap.
Why?
I couldn't believe it, but then I found out they was raising a whole farm full, and we could just raise a little bit.
Why?
But that's all over with, and
Well, you can raise all the tobacco you want to now.
you got to have somebody to buy it from you.
Yeah,
know?
you got to have a buyer, yeah. And they'll buy it, but
At their price.
You don't know yet their price. You don't know how much you're gonna pay for it. You know.
Well, it don't matter. There's the other way. I remember they come through, the agriculture people come through here and convinced the farmers in Campbell County that to get out of the tobacco, they need to get out of quit relying on the tobacco business. They need to get into something else, and everybody raised peppers, bell peppers one year. Everybody's gonna get rich on bell peppers. Everybody I know had bell peppers out.
Right.
They flooded the market, and they wouldn't bring nothing. They didn't do no good at all.
About like cabbage one time bought about 2 or 3 cents a piece.
Yeah.
You know.
My daddy, him and another fella was going to go into the pumpkin business one time. They was a good business in pumpkins, and they raised a whole field full of them, and they got ready to sell them, and wouldn't give them nothing for them. They fed them, fattened their hogs on pumpkins. They had hog meat.
Well, now I had a different experience with pumpkins. I had an 18-acre bottom land.
Mhm.
I mean, it was rich, and I planted it full of pumpkins, and I made good money. Food Line,
Yeah.
Kroger. There's 2 food companies that hauled out of there.
Yeah.
And I probably made on that 18 acres, I probably made somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000.
But you know what? These pumpkins now, they sell $5 and $6 a piece.
Why?
I can remember when a pie pumpkin, the big one was $1 and the little one was 50 cents.
Right.
You can't even buy a pie pumpkin anymore. Everybody thinks pie, a pumpkin pie comes in a can. You can't-
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. This guy out in West Tennessee, out around Nashville, he put out 10 acres of okra every year. And he went around, he had this circuit. He worked up into the north, all the way up as far as Ohio. He had a route that he run up there taking this stuff. He established a market for it. And you know, this has been several years ago. It wasn't something a lot of people knew about in the cities at that
Right.
time. And of course, you know, you got to pick that stuff every day.
Yeah, I know.
And it after you get it started coming in, you get it bears if you take care of it and you got good management.
The frost.
Yeah, and the way he managed that, he got these welfare people that wasn't allowed to work, or they'd lose their check. He paid them cash to go out and pick his okra every day, and every day they'd go out and pick several bushel of that stuff, and he'd go peddle it on his route, and he'd come back the next day, maybe skip a day and take 2 loads at once, but he kept it on going, and at that time he was making about $10,000 or $12,000 per season off of it, clearing that much. Well, that
Right.
was a lot of money back then. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
back when the engineers were starting out at about 12 or 14,000,
Right.
and he's only doing it in the summer months.
Right. 4 months, about
Yeah.
4 months, yeah.
When school teachers' side jobs.
Well, when I was raising all this tobacco farming, I was teaching school. And I got out at 3 o'clock every day. That was usually daylight savings time, which meant I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 hours a day that I could put in on the farm, before it got dark. And it didn't make no difference on the farm if it got dark. You finished your work. It didn't make any difference whether it was daylight or dark.
I watched them guys out in Kansas come in. They go around them combines and they do the harvest.
Right. They're custom.
And I don't remember what time of day they got there. They'd work till they got done, 24 hours a day till
Right.
they got done. They'd change drivers and sleep a while. They know how to farm out there.
Yeah, I know it is. Yeah, it sure is. I've been out across there, and it sure is a lot of green land out there. But one of the things I've had in the back of my mind is there's a tremendous need for cotton nowadays.
Yeah.
And cotton, they say you can make pretty good money if cotton will bring 50, 60 cents a pound. Well, it's bringing about 85 to 90 cents a pound now, so I think the cotton farmers are doing real well.
That's
But-
good.
Hmm?
That's good.
Well, cotton is a legume, okay? And
I didn't know that.
sure. It has seeds in a pod. Yeah, and
Yeah, okay.
you can. I believe a man could go to the agriculture department and he could get him a loan to buy his equipment, buy his fertilizer, buy his seeds, hire his help, and he can make a lease arrangements with all these people who's got this land laying out, give them a percentage. If they got 5 acres, then they figure that in the total acres and pay them on the basis of that. You could go around and get all this land for no more than $1 real money, and you could easily come up with 1,000 acres right here in this
Well,
part
now
of.
this land here ain't exactly cotton farming land.
It's good cotton farming land. What's wrong with it?
It's not to use the kind of equipment they use to
Oh,
harvest.
no, you'd have to go with a different type of small picker so you can, hit these hoops and hollers. That's what I'm talking.
Okay,
That's what
okay.
I'm talking about.
I didn't know they had anything you could do that
you
without.
go with, oh man, they got little bitty balers for hay now and all sorts of things like that. But yeah, you get a small cotton picker, that's the one about the high, with long arms.
Yeah.
My daddy said he was so proud of his young boy when he could pick 100 pounds a day.
Well, I never did fool with any cotton I've seen it growing. I
Yeah.
was out there.
Well, I'll tell you, I did. My daddy, we complained about having to work in the park. He says, I'm going to show you what work is. So he planted 2 acres of cotton. and that was some kind of work. You had to hoe and do everything you did to tobacco, And then when you pick that thing,
Well, do you plant seeds or how do you do
you
that?
plant seeds.
Okay.
Yeah, sure
I
did.
never had anywhere I know
Yeah.
anything about
Yeah.
cotton. And
Yeah,
now my mommy's family used to raise cotton back. And they didn't sell it; they used it.
Oh, yeah.
But I was out in coming out of I was going from California over toward Arizona, and I'd been by there before. This is over around Slab City. And I drove by there about 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw this big long line of building, had roof over it, and it was open. And they had feed troughs in there, and they had calves, and anywhere from half grown up to yearlings and
Right.
that kind. And they just standing there eating, and this went on for, I'd say they was, if you lined, they hadn't doubled up 2 or 3 back to there. If you had them straightened out, they'd probably been a mile of these feeders. And they was finishing off these beef cattle.
Right.
Well, I come by there this year and I looked over there and they had Holsteins.
Had what?
Holsteins,
Okay.
you know, them black and white cows.
Yeah.
And they was lined up over there, and I thought, what in the world? I thought Holsteins was all dairy cattle.
Right.
I didn't know you ever used them for beef. And that puzzled me till I looked it up. But do you know why they had all them Holsteins?
No, they were feeding them. They were nursing the calves.
No, they was going to sell them for meat.
Really?
Yeah, there's bulls or steers.
Steers.
Yeah, you can't milk one of them.
Right.
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
He don't take too lightly to that.
No, but you know, I hadn't thought about it. These here dairy farmers, they raise, you know, they'll raise up they'll breed and raise up a fresh crop, and percentage-wise, half of them's throwaway.
Right.
So they round them up and sell them to this feedlot there, and they finish them off and sell them
Right.
for beef.
Right.
And there was, I bet you they was 300 or 400 in there when I come by, and I thought, what are they doing with these here? Well, I thought this was feeding these things to sell them for beef, and what are they doing that with the dairy cows?
Right. We should raise our
Just
own
plumb
cows.
dumb.
Raise our own cows. My daddy was kind of forward thinking. He had them artificially inseminated.
Yeah.
I always
Back
kept
then?
them. Yeah, I always kept them when they first started doing it when I was a young boy. He'd have it artificially inseminated, and he increased his herd. They become better and better.
Yeah.
Type of cows, and we raised Guernsey cows, and he'd have them artificially inseminated, and all the little Guernsey bulls. We had the thing that we
Yeah.
would put the rubber band around
Yeah.
them and castrate them that way. And in fact, I still got that thing somewhere.
Well, don't bring it around here. You know, there was this year, fresh out of college, extension agents, you know, going out into the farmland here and helping these farmers. And he went into this little country store, and he was in there, and they was talking about castrating bulls.
Right.
And them farmers were talking. They said, "Well, we just do it with bricks, you know. They just barely feel it, you know. You just slam them 2 bricks together there, and you don't have to. I mean, it's over with." And this year guy, this fresh out of college guy, just appalled him, you know.
Right.
Oh no.
That's about like that. Without
He said, "You can't do that." Well, why not? We've been doing it for years. Is it not painful? And the guy said, "Well, this if you get your thumbs in the way. If you get your thumbs in the way."
That's the only time it's painful.
Yeah, it just hurts if you get your thumbs between the bricks.
I thought you were going to tell about the.
The elephant?
Huh?
The elephant?
No, not
Okay.
the elephant. I thought you were going to tell about the camel.
I don't know about the camel unless it was the same story as the elephant.
I don't know. The camel, this one guy, his camels would go about 3 or 4 more days longer without water
Yeah.
than the ones, other people's camels. They said, well, how does you get your camels to go so long without water? He says, I brick them. He says, what do you mean you brick them? Says, well, when they're over there drinking, says, I slip up behind them and I clamp their balls together like that, and the old camel goes and takes in an extra 3 or 4 days worth of water.
I heard about the elephant, you know, they had this elephant and he was trained to always shake his head up and down.
Yeah.
And they had a $50 prize. Anybody could get this elephant to shake his head no. And this trainer had the camel trained pretty good, you know. He could get him to say no. He had this kind of, you know, special question he'd ask, and he proved that it could be done, and you pay $2 and you get to ask the elephant 2 questions.
Right.
And if you could get the elephant to shake his head anything except yes every time, you got to $50. Well, there's this little boy. He watched that, and he just had $2, and he was willing to take a chance. But he snuck in the tent one day and introduced himself to the elephant, and then he got over there when there wasn't nobody looking. He took these 2 bricks and clamped that elephant good, you know.
Right.
Well, later on today, you know, elephants got good memories. They never forget. I guess you got 3 questions. So the little boy, he come up, give the guy his $2, and he said, "Hello, elephant, you remember me?" You remember what I done to you? You want me to do it again?
Hey, you want me to do it again?
Yeah.
Right.
This show has certainly gone downhill.
Well, I've kind of enjoyed it tonight,
Yeah.
even though I couldn't remember my poem.
Yeah, well, you know, do like Sarah Palin, write it on your hand.
Yeah. Well, you know, Sir Winston Churchill was supposed to have about a 70 IQ. And he said he wrote all of his answers on his shirt sleeve, and that's the way he passed his examinations. And
He had more than 70 IQ.
I think you have to look it up, and ask him what the supposed the IQ of Winston Churchill.
They claimed he was a drunk, but secretly he didn't drink that much. He just made the show of drinking more than he did.
Right, yeah.
They said he was at a party, and some highfalutin woman there, she said, "Mr. Churchill, I do believe you're drunk." Churchill says, "Madam, that's true. I'm drunk and you're ugly, but tomorrow I shall be sober."
You'll still be ugly.
They also said he went in this year, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a socialist, you know. And he was, one of the leaders of the opposition party there in the parliament. And he was a socialist, and he believed that the government ought to control everything. And went to the toilet, you know, and this here socialist guy, I can't remember his name, Lord somebody, but he was in there, and he was standing there at the urinal taking care of his business, and Churchill come in, looked at him, went way, way on down to the last one in line. There's a whole line of them. And he was proceeding to take care of business down there, and this guy says, "Winnie, you're a bit standoffish today, aren't you?" And he says, "Well, every time you see something big, you want to nationalize it."
All right.
Thank you, folks, and we'll have a show that's fit for church consumption next week. Maybe we've certainly degraded this one. It's all Bob's fault.
Right. Thank you, folks. I've enjoyed it tonight. I don't know whether you have or not.